The bridge of the Terran warship Soul's hammer was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Captain Lee Dobbin stood near the main screen, watching the stars drift by as her ship moved through deep space. Her crew had been on patrol for 3 months now, checking the outer edges of human territory for any signs of trouble. Admiral Kim Tae-ho was visiting from the Fleet Command ship. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes who had fought in many battles to protect human space. Today he seemed restless, walking around the bridge and checking different stations. "Nothing to report, Admiral," said Communications Officer Choi Yoo-jin from her seat.
She was young but very good at her job.
"All quiet on all frequencies." The Admiral nodded but kept pacing. Something felt wrong to him, though he could not say what. In his 30 years of military service, he had learned to trust his feelings about danger. Engineer Park Ji-woo was working at his station, making sure all the ship's weapons were ready. He was a careful man who always wanted everything to work perfectly. "All systems are green, Captain," he said without looking up from his screens. Captain Dobbin was about to order the ship to continue its patrol route when Choi Yoo-jin suddenly sat up straight. She pressed her hand to her earpiece and frowned. "Captain, I'm getting something strange," she said. "It's very weak, but it sounds like a distress signal." "From where?" Admiral Tae-ho asked, moving quickly to her station. "Unknown, sir. The signal is coming from way outside our space, maybe 40 light-years from here." Choi Yoo-jin worked at her controls, trying to make the signal clearer. "It's not in any human language." Captain Dobbin felt her heart start beating faster. First contact with aliens was always dangerous. "Can you clean it up?" "Working on it now, Captain." Choi Yoo-jin's fingers moved over her keyboard. Slowly, the static-filled noise became clearer. Strange sounds filled the bridge, not quite like any Earth animal, but clearly the voice of some kind of living being. The computer began working to translate the alien words. After a few minutes, text appeared on the main screen. The translation was not perfect, but the meaning was clear enough to make everyone on the bridge go silent. "Help us. Please, anyone who can hear this. We are dying. Our worlds are burning. They take everything. Leave nothing alive. We have heard of the Deathworlders, the humans. Please help us. We will give you anything. Just please help." The message repeated several times, getting weaker each time. Then it stopped completely. Admiral Tae-ho stared at the screen. "Deathworlders? Is that what they call us?" Engineer Ji-woo looked up from his station. "Sir, I've heard that name before. Some of the alien traders use it when they talk about humans. They think Earth is so dangerous that only crazy people could live there." Captain Dobbin walked closer to the communications station. "Yoo-jin, can you find out where exactly this came from?" "Yes, Captain. The signal came from a star system called Kepler 442. It's very far away, but I can get exact coordinates." Choi Yoo-jin worked for several more minutes. "Captain, there's something else. The computer has been scanning our databases for any information about whoever sent this message." "What did you find?" "They call themselves the Vexhai. They're a peaceful species that lives on crystal worlds. According to our files, they've never contacted humans before. They usually keep to themselves and don't bother anyone." Admiral Tae-ho felt a cold feeling in his stomach. If peaceful aliens were asking humans for help, something very bad was happening. "What about these attackers they mentioned?" "Nothing in our databases, sir, but..." Choi Yoo-jin hesitated. The way they described the attacks, taking everything and leaving nothing alive, that sounds like something we've heard rumors about. Some traders have talked about entire star systems going dark. No signals, no life, nothing. Engineer Ji-woo stood up from his station. "Admiral, if someone is destroying entire worlds, that's genocide. We can't just ignore that." Captain Dobbin looked at her crew. They were all watching her, waiting to see what she would decide. She had a good crew, but this decision was too big for her alone. "Admiral, what are your orders?" Admiral Tae-ho was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the rules that said human ships should not get involved in alien conflicts. He thought about the danger of going so far from human space to fight an unknown enemy. But then he thought about the fear in that alien voice begging for help. "Captain, call all senior officers to the meeting room. We need to discuss this properly." He turned to look at the main screen where the alien message was still displayed. "And send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we may have a situation that requires immediate attention." As the crew prepared for the meeting, Admiral Tae-ho remained on the bridge. He had spent his whole career protecting human space from threats. But now he was thinking about something different. protecting innocent aliens from an enemy that might threaten humans too, if left unchecked. The meeting room filled quickly with the ship's senior officers. Captain Dobbin sat at the head of the table with Admiral Tejo beside her. The faces around the table were serious as they listened to the alien message again. "So," Captain Dobbin said when the message finished, "we have aliens asking for our help against an unknown enemy. The question is, what do we do about it?" Lieutenant Commander Han Bo-Ra, the ship's security chief, spoke first. "Captain, this could be a trap. We know nothing about these Vexi or their enemies. Going into unknown space could put the entire ship at risk. But," said Dr. Kim Min-jae, the ship's medical officer, "if this is real, then an entire species might die if we do nothing. That goes against everything humans believe about protecting innocent life." Engineer Ji-woo nodded. "The doctor is right. Besides, if these attackers are as dangerous as the message suggests, they might come for human space eventually. It's better to fight them now, while we can choose the time and place." Admiral Tejo listened to the discussion for several minutes before speaking. "There's something else to consider. These aliens specifically asked for humans. They called us Deathworlders and said they had heard of us. That means our reputation is spreading through alien space. Is that good or bad?" asked Communications Officer Yu-jin. "Both," the Admiral replied. "It means aliens know we're strong fighters. But it also means they know where to find us if they want revenge." The discussion continued for another hour. Some officers wanted to help the aliens immediately. Others thought it was too dangerous. Finally, Admiral Tejo called for quiet. "Here's what we're going to do," he said. "We're going to take a vote. Every officer in this room gets one vote. We'll do what the majority decides." The vote was close, but the result was clear. 8 officers voted to help the aliens. 5 voted to stay away. Captain Dobbin looked around the table. "The decision is made. We're going to help them." She turned to Admiral Tejo. "Sir, what are your orders?" Admiral Tejo stood up. "We're going to need more ships. I'm calling in the entire 7th Battle Group. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right." He looked at each officer in turn. "Prepare the ship for long-range combat operations. We leave for the Kepler 442 system in 6 hours." As the officers filed out of the meeting room, Captain Dobbin stayed behind with the Admiral. "Sir, are we doing the right thing?" Admiral Tejo looked out the window at the stars. "Captain, in my experience, the right thing is usually the hard thing. These aliens asked for help, and humans don't abandon people who need help. That's who we are. Even if it means fighting an enemy we know nothing about." "Especially then," the Admiral replied. "Because if we don't fight them now, we might have to fight them later in human space over human graves." The human fleet arrived at the edge of the Kepler 442 system after 5 days of traveling through hyperspace. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the main screen with growing horror. What he saw there would stay in his nightmares for years to come. 3 planets that had once been green and full of life were now nothing but gray, dead rocks floating in space. Their atmospheres were gone, sucked away into the darkness. Where cities had once stood, only deep holes remained, as if giant machines had eaten everything down to the planet's core. "My God," whispered Captain Lee Dobbin from beside him. "What kind of monsters could do this?" Major Kang Hyun-soo, leader of the reconnaissance Marines, was studying his scanner readings. He was a tough soldier who had seen many battles, but even he looked sick. "Admiral, I'm reading no life signs at all on those 3 worlds. Whatever hit them, they stripped everything clean. No plants, no animals, no people, nothing." Dr. Yoon So-young, the fleet's expert on alien cultures, was working at her science station. Her face was pale as she read the data. "Sir, based on these scans, I estimate these planets once held about 2 billion Vexi. Now there's nothing but empty rock." Communications Officer Choi Yu-jin suddenly looked up from her station. "Admiral, I'm picking up signals from the 4th planet. It's still alive, but barely. The Vexi are still there, but they're surrounded." Admiral Tejo moved to look at her screen. "How many enemy ships?" "Counting now, sir." Yu-jin worked at her controls, her face getting more worried with each number. "Sir, I count over 3,000 enemy vessels surrounding the planet, and they're not like any ships I've ever seen before." On the main screen, the enemy fleet came into view. The ships were not built like human vessels with clean metal lines and sharp edges. Instead, they looked alive, like giant sea creatures floating in space. Their hulls seemed to breathe and pulse with their own heartbeat. Some ships had what looked like tentacles or claws extending from their sides. Engineer Park Ji-woo stared at the enemy ships with fascination and disgust. "Captain, those ships, they're not machines. They're living things. I'm reading biological signatures from all of them." Living ships? Admiral Taeho had heard rumors of such things, but had never seen them before. How is that possible? Dr. So-young was already working to answer that question. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple species aboard those vessels. It looks like each ship has crews from different alien races, but they're all working together under some kind of central command." Major Hyun-soo checked his weapons. "Admiral, we need to get closer to get better information. I request permission to take a stealth team in for reconnaissance." "Absolutely not," Captain Dobbin said immediately. "Major, we don't know what kind of sensors they have. You could be walking into a trap." "Captain, with respect, this is what my team does. We get information so the fleet can make good decisions." Major Hyun-soo looked at Admiral Taeho. "Sir, we need to know what we're fighting before we commit the entire fleet." Admiral Taeho thought for a moment. The Major was right, they needed more information. But sending people into that swarm of alien ships seemed like suicide. "Major, what's your plan?" "We use the new stealth fighters. Pilot Song Min-ho and I take a small team in cloaked ships. We get close enough to scan their technology and communication frequencies, then get out fast." Pilot Song Min-ho stepped forward. He was young, but had the best flying record in the fleet. "Admiral, the new cloaking systems are very good. As long as we don't stay too long or get too close, we should be invisible to their sensors." Admiral Taeho looked around the bridge. Everyone was waiting for his decision. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, but I want constant communication. If anything goes wrong, you retreat immediately. Information is worthless if we lose good people getting it." 2 hours later, Major Hyun-soo and Pilot Min-ho were floating in space in their small stealth ship, slowly moving toward the enemy fleet. The cloaking device made them invisible to most sensors, but it also meant they had to fly very carefully to avoid being detected. "Look at the size of some of those ships," Min-ho whispered as they got closer. "That one there must be 20 kilometers long." Through their ship's windows they could see the enemy vessels up close. The living ships were even more horrible when seen in detail. Their hulls were covered with what looked like scales or skin, and some had eyes, actual eyes, looking out into space. "Major, I'm picking up communication signals," said the ship's computer. "Translating now." The alien voices that came through the speakers were cold and harsh. As the computer translated their words, both humans felt their blood run cold. Harvesting of planetary core proceeding on schedule. Biological material processing at 90% efficiency. Recommend beginning atmospheric stripping of final world within 6 rotations. Understood. Commander Vashitar reports slave crews are working at acceptable levels. Any crew showing defiance will be fed to the ship's digestive systems. Major Hyun-soo and Pilot Min-ho looked at each other with horror. These aliens were not just conquering worlds, they were eating them. And they were using enslaved aliens as their workers. "Min-ho, get us closer to that big ship. I need to see what's inside." Their stealth ship moved carefully through the enemy fleet. As they got closer to the largest vessel, they could see through transparent sections of its hull. What they saw made them both feel sick. Inside the ship, hundreds of different alien species were working in terrible conditions. Some looked like they were barely alive, forced to operate strange machines that seemed to be part of the ship itself. Others were locked in what could only be described as feeding chambers, where the ship was slowly digesting them alive. "These monsters," Min-ho said quietly. "They're using living beings as both slaves and food." "It gets worse," said Major Hyun-soo, pointing at his scanner. "Look at these readings. Some of these enslaved aliens have been modified. They've had parts of their bodies replaced with biological machines. They're being turned into living tools." As they watched, they saw guards moving through the ship. These creatures were different from the slaves, bigger, stronger, and covered in what looked like natural armor. They carried weapons that seemed to be grown rather than built, and they treated the enslaved aliens with casual cruelty. "Major, we need to get out of here," Min-ho said. "I'm reading energy buildup in several of the larger ships. I think they're getting ready to attack the planet." But before they could leave, their computer picked up something else, a weak signal coming from one of the enemy ships. As the computer translated it, they realized it was not coming from the guards or commanders. It was coming from the slaves. Anyone listening? "We are the Kurvani. enslaved 50 years ago. We have sabotaged 17 ships. We need help. If anyone can hear this. Major Hyun-soo made a decision that would change the course of the coming battle. Instead of leaving immediately, he ordered Minho to move their ship closer to the source of the signal. What are you doing, Major? You said we needed to leave. Change of plans. We need to make contact with those slaves. If they're already fighting back, we might be able to help each other. Using their ship's computers, they sent a carefully coded message back to the Corvani slaves. We hear you. Help is coming. Can you tell us about enemy weaknesses? The response came back quickly, filled with desperate hope. Ships are vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses at specific frequencies. Many slaves are ready to revolt but need signal to coordinate. Largest ships have life support systems that can be sabotaged from inside. Major Hyun-soo smiled grimly. This changed everything. The enemy might have thousands of ships, but if many of their crews were enslaved aliens waiting for a chance to fight back, the odds were not as bad as they seemed. Minho, we're leaving now. But first, send them this message. When the human fleet attacks, you will know. Be ready. As their stealth ship carefully moved away from the enemy fleet, both humans were thinking about what they had learned. The enemy was powerful and cruel, but they had a weakness they probably did not know about. Their slaves were ready to rebel. Back on the flagship, Admiral Tae-ho listened to Major Hyun-soo's report with growing anger. The description of the enslaved aliens and the casual genocide being committed made him want to attack immediately. But he was a smart commander who knew that anger alone would not win battles. So they're using living ships powered by enslaved crews, he said when the major finished his report. And these Corvani slaves are willing to help us? Yes, sir. They've been waiting 50 years for someone to help them fight back. They know the enemy ships better than anyone. Dr. So-young had been studying the data from the reconnaissance mission. Admiral, I think I understand what we're fighting now. These aliens, they call themselves the Dominion of Ash. They're biological supremacists. They believe that only natural living things have the right to exist. They see all technology as an abomination that must be destroyed. That explains why they hate the Vexhai so much, said Engineer Jiwoo. The Vexhai are crystalline beings who naturally interface with technology. To these Dominion aliens, they must represent everything they hate. Admiral Tae-ho studied the tactical display showing the enemy fleet, 3,000 ships against his 50. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stared at the battle plan displayed on the main screen of his flagship. What he was about to order would be considered insane by any other species in the galaxy. But then again, other species had not evolved on a planet where everything was constantly trying to kill them. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Captain Lee Dobbin. Looking at the tactical display, we're going to split our fleet into small groups, sneak past 3,000 enemy ships and somehow get aboard their vessels to help enslaved aliens start a rebellion? That's exactly what we're going to do, Admiral Tae-ho replied. Engineer Jiwoo, what's the status on those electromagnetic pulse weapons? Engineer Park Jiwoo looked up from his workstation where he had been building the new weapons for the past 6 hours. Almost ready, Admiral. The Corvani gave us very specific frequency data. These devices should disrupt the biological systems of their living ships without harming the enslaved crews inside. Commander Jang Woo-jin stepped forward. He was the leader of the special operations teams, a quiet man who specialized in impossible missions. Admiral, my teams are ready for the infiltration operations. We've studied the reconnaissance data and identified 12 key targets, the largest enemy ships that seem to be command vessels. How many people are we talking about sending into those death traps? Asked Dr. Yoon So-young. She had been working around the clock to understand the alien biology and figure out how humans could survive aboard their ships. 48 volunteers total, Commander Woo-jin answered. 4-person teams for each target. We'll use the small stealth ships to get close, then board through maintenance ports that Major Hyun-soo identified. Admiral Tae-ho looked around the bridge at his officers. These were good people who had volunteered to follow him on this mission, even though they all knew the odds were terrible. I want to be clear about something. This plan is dangerous beyond anything we've attempted before. The enemy ships have poisonous atmospheres, crushing gravity, and temperatures that can kill humans in minutes. Anyone who wants to withdraw from this mission can do so now with no shame. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The message was clear. They were all staying. Sergeant Lim Hae-won, the fleet's explosives expert, raised her hand. Admiral, what about the charges we're supposed to plant on their ships? If those living vessels can heal themselves, how do we make sure our sabotage actually works? Good question, Engineer Jiwoo said. The electromagnetic pulse devices aren't just weapons. They're also designed to disrupt the ship's healing abilities. Once we hit them with the right frequency, they won't be able to repair damage for several hours. Captain Nam Ki-tae, commander of the stealth destroyer Busan's Ghost, had been quiet during the briefing. Now he spoke up. Admiral, my ship can provide support for the infiltration teams, but only if we can coordinate our attacks precisely. If even one team gets discovered too early, the whole operation fails. Which is why we're going to attack all 12 ships at exactly the same time, Admiral Tejo said. The Corvani slaves are monitoring our communications frequencies. When we give the signal, they'll start their rebellion simultaneously across the entire enemy fleet. Commander Wu Jin checked his equipment one more time. His team would be boarding the largest enemy ship, a massive vessel that seemed to be the command center for the entire Dominion fleet. Sir, what if we encounter resistance inside the ships? Our weapons might not work in their atmosphere. Dr. So Young answered that question. I've modified your combat suits to function in multiple alien atmospheres. They'll protect you from the worst environmental hazards, but you'll still need to be careful. Some of these ships have internal temperatures of over 200 degrees. Lovely, muttered Sergeant Haewon. As if fighting giant alien monsters wasn't enough, now we have to do it while being slowly cooked alive. Admiral Tejo smiled slightly. This was why he loved serving with humans. Other species would be terrified by the conditions they were about to face. Humans just complained about them and then got ready to fight anyway. All teams report to your ships, he ordered. We begin the operation in 1 hour. As the special operations teams prepared for their missions, Captain Nam Ki-tae was making final adjustments to his stealth destroyer. The Busan's Ghost was the most advanced human ship in the fleet, designed specifically for covert operations behind enemy lines. Captain, said his navigation officer, I've plotted courses for all 12 infiltration teams. We can provide cover for 6 of them directly, but the other 6 will be on their own once they board the enemy ships. Understood, Captain Ki-tae replied. Just make sure we're ready to extract any teams that get into trouble. I don't want to lose good people because we weren't fast enough. Meanwhile, Commander Wu Jin was briefing his team one final time. The 4 soldiers with him were volunteers from different human worlds, each chosen for their specific skills. They had trained together for years, but this mission was unlike anything they had ever attempted. Remember, he told them, our primary objective is to reach the ship's command center and help the Corvani slaves take control. Secondary objective is to plant the electromagnetic pulse devices in their power systems. If everything goes wrong, our tertiary objective is to cause as much damage as possible before we die. Cheerful as always, Commander, said Corporal An Ji-ho, checking his assault rifle. Any idea what kind of guards we'll be facing inside these ships? According to the reconnaissance data, the Dominion uses a species called the Thakari as their primary soldiers. They're big, strong, and have natural armor, but they're not very smart and they rely on brute force rather than tactics. Sounds like our kind of fight, said Private Cho Hyejin, adjusting her combat suit. Big and stupid means they probably won't expect humans to actually board their ships. Sergeant Lim Haewon was loading her explosives into a specially designed pack. Commander, how long do we have once we plant these charges? The electromagnetic pulses will disable their healing abilities for about 4 hours. That should be enough time for the slave rebellion to take control of the ships. If it takes longer than that, Commander Wu Jin shrugged. Well, let's hope it doesn't. Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening on 11 other ships as teams prepared for their missions. The humans knew they were about to attempt something that would either save an entire species or get them all killed. Possibly both. Finally, the time came. Admiral Tejo watched on his main screen as 12 small stealth ships separated from the human fleet and began moving toward the enemy vessels. Each ship carried a 4-person team and enough equipment to either disable a massive alien, warship, or die trying. All teams report ready, came the voice of Commander Wu Jin over the communication system. Good hunting, Admiral Tejo replied. Remember, wait for my signal before you begin the attack. We only get one chance at this. The stealth ships moved slowly through space using their cloaking devices to avoid detection by the enemy fleet. It took 2 hours for them to reach their targets and another hour to find suitable boarding points on the massive living ships. Commander Woojin's team was the first to board their target. Using plasma cutters, they burned through the ship's outer skin and climbed inside. Immediately, they were hit by a wave of heat and humidity that would have killed most aliens. Their human biology, adapted to Earth's hostile environment, allowed them to function even in these extreme conditions. Temperature is 180 degrees, reported Corporal Jiho, reading his suit's sensors. Atmosphere is mostly methane with traces of sulfur compounds. Gravity is twice Earth normal. Perfect vacation spot, Private Hyojin commented as they moved through the ship's corridors. The walls around them pulsed with a steady heartbeat, and strange fluids dripped from the ceiling. They had been moving for 10 minutes when they encountered their first enemy guards. 3 Thakari soldiers were standing at what appeared to be a checkpoint. They were indeed large and armored, standing nearly 3 meters tall with thick, scaly skin that looked almost like rock. The Thakari had not expected to find anyone aboard their ship, much less small humans in environmental suits. This gave Commander Woojin's team the element of surprise they needed. Before the guards could react, the humans opened fire with their modified weapons. The fight was over in seconds. The Thakari were strong and tough, but they moved slowly and had not been prepared for human tactics. More importantly, they had never faced enemies who could move and fight effectively in the harsh environment of their own ship. Guards neutralized, Commander Woojin reported to the fleet, proceeding to primary objective. Similar reports came in from the other teams. The surprise attacks were working. The Dominion guards had not expected anyone to be crazy enough to board their ships, and certainly not in environmental conditions that would kill most species. As the teams moved deeper into the enemy vessels, they began to encounter the enslaved aliens. The sight of these beings made even hardened human soldiers angry. The slaves were clearly being worked to death, forced to operate machinery that was slowly killing them. But when the slaves saw the humans, something changed in their eyes. Hope began to replace despair. Commander Woojin's team reached their target ship's engineering section. The space around the Vexhai homeworld erupted into chaos as Admiral Kim Tae-ho's fleet engaged the Dominion forces. But just as the battle seemed hopeless against overwhelming odds, something happened that changed everything. A massive flash of light filled the darkness of space as dozens of new ships dropped out of hyperspace. Then dozens more. Then hundreds, Admiral. Communications Officer Choi Yu-jin called out excitedly from her station. I'm reading incoming human vessels from multiple directions. It's the entire Terran Defense Fleet. Admiral Tae-ho stared at the main screen in amazement. Ships were arriving from all corners of human space. Heavy cruisers, destroyers, fighter squadrons, and massive dreadnoughts that had not been seen outside of Earth's solar system in 50 years. This is General Oh Dong-hyun aboard the TDF Indomitable, came a familiar voice over the communication system. Admiral Tae-ho, sorry we're late to the party. We brought some friends. General Dong-hyun was Admiral Tae-ho's old commander and mentor, a veteran of humanity's first contact wars. His arrival meant that Earth itself had decided this battle was important enough to risk everything. General, how did you know we needed help? Admiral Tae-ho asked. Your message about alien genocide reached Earth 3 days ago. The Council voted unanimously. When innocents call for help, humans answer. Every available ship in the fleet has been mobilized. Captain Lee Dabin watched her tactical display as more and more human ships appeared. Admiral, I count over 800 vessels. That's the largest human fleet ever assembled. But even as the human reinforcements arrived, the Dominion fleet was reacting to the slave rebellion happening within their own ships. The massive living vessels were writhing and convulsing as their enslaved crews fought for control. Some ships were firing at each other as liberated slaves turned weapons against their former masters. Captain Shin Yoon-ji commanded one of the new heavy cruisers that had just arrived. The Inchin's Wrath was equipped with the latest human weapons technology, including improved versions of Engineer Ji-woo's electromagnetic pulse cannons. Captain, reported her weapons officer, we have clear shots at multiple enemy vessels. Their formation is breaking apart due to the internal fighting. Target the largest ships first, Captain Yoon-ji ordered. Focus on the ones that aren't showing signs of slave rebellion. Let's help our people who are fighting inside the others. Tech specialist Bae Sung-min had been working around the clock to improve the electromagnetic weapons based on data from the infiltration teams. His new devices were more powerful and had a longer range than the original versions. Captain Yoon-ji, he called from his station. "The enhanced pulse cannons are ready. These should be able to disrupt multiple enemy ships with each shot." The battle began in earnest as human ships engaged the Dominion fleet. But this was unlike any space battle the galaxy had ever seen. The humans did not fight like other species, who preferred long-range combat with careful formations and predictable tactics. Instead, human ships moved in seemingly random patterns, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the massive but slow Dominion vessels. Human captains made split-second decisions that seemed insane to alien observers, but worked perfectly against enemies who expected logical, cautious behavior. Admiral Taiho watched as Captain Nam, Kite's stealth destroyer Busan's Ghost, materialized directly behind a Dominion command ship and fired a full spread of torpedoes at point-blank range. The enemy vessel, already weakened by the electromagnetic pulse devices planted by the infiltration teams, broke apart under the concentrated fire. "Direct hit," called Engineer Jiwoo. "That's one command ship down." But the Dominion was not giving up easily. Their massive ships began converging on the human fleet, trying to use their size advantage to crush the smaller human vessels. The living ships extended what looked like tentacles or claws, attempting to grab and destroy any human ship that came too close. This tactic might have worked against other species, but humans had learned to fight in the deadly environments of their homeworld. They were used to being smaller and weaker than their enemies, and they had developed tactics to turn those disadvantages into strengths. Captain Dobbin demonstrated this perfectly as her flagship, Soul's Hammer, dove straight toward a massive Dominion vessel that was trying to crush her ship. At the last possible moment, she ordered a sharp turn that brought her ship alongside the enemy's hull, where her weapons could do maximum damage while the larger ship could not bring its guns to bear. "This is how we do it," she called to her crew as their weapons tore through the enemy ship's living armor. "Fast, close, and dirty." Meanwhile, the infiltration teams inside the enemy ships were coordinating with the liberated slaves to cause maximum confusion. "Commander." Jang Woo-jin's team had reached the command center of their target ship and was helping the Corvani rebels take control of the vessel's weapon systems. "Commander," called one of the Corvani slaves, "we can turn this ship's guns against the other Dominion vessels, but we need someone to coordinate the targeting." "You handle the weapons," Commander Woo-jin replied, studying the ship's tactical displays. "I'll pick the targets." Within minutes, the captured Dominion ship was firing on its former allies. The sight of their own vessels turning against them caused panic throughout the enemy fleet. The Dominion commanders had never faced a rebellion of this scale before. But the turning point of the battle came when the liberated alien species began joining the fight in earnest. Dozens of different races that had been enslaved by the Dominion suddenly had ships and weapons at their disposal, and 50 years of anger gave them the motivation to use them effectively. The Corvani, who had spent decades secretly sabotaging Dominion ships, proved to be excellent engineers and tacticians. The Zilani, another enslaved species, turned out to be skilled pilots who could outmaneuver even the improved Dominion vessels. Other species contributed their own unique abilities to the growing rebellion. General Dong Hyun, commanding the overall human fleet, watched as the battle shifted from a desperate fight for survival to a coordinated campaign of liberation. "All human vessels, this is General Dong Hyun. New orders. Priority goes to protecting and supporting the liberated aliens. Help them free their people from any remaining Dominion ships." The electromagnetic weapons proved to be the key to victory. Tech specialist Sung Min's improved pulse cannons could disable multiple enemy ships with each shot, and once their biological systems were disrupted, the massive living vessels became sitting targets for both human and liberated alien forces. Sergeant Lim Hae-won, still aboard an enemy ship with Commander Woo-jin's team, was planting additional charges in the vessel's power core. "Commander, I can overload this ship's energy systems. It'll create a chain reaction that should disable at least 6 nearby vessels." "Do it," Commander Woo-jin ordered. "But make sure we have an escape route first. I don't want to become heroes by accident." As more and more Dominion ships fell to the combined human and alien assault, the remaining enemy forces began to retreat toward the edge of the star system. But Admiral Taeho was not about to let them escape to threaten other innocent species. "All ships pursue and destroy," he ordered. "We cannot allow any of these genocidal monsters to escape and attack other worlds." The pursuit lasted for several hours, as human ships chased down fleeing Dominion vessels throughout the star system. The enemy's living ships were fast, but they could not match the speed and determination of humans who had decided that justice needed to be served. Captain Yoon-ji's heavy cruiser caught up with a group of fleeing Dominion ships near the system's outer planets. "This is Captain Shin Yoon-ji of the Terran Defense Force," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Surrender now and you will be treated according to galactic law. Continue to flee and you will be destroyed." The Dominion ships responded by firing their weapons at the human vessel. It was their last mistake. The Incheon's wrath unleashed a full barrage of electromagnetic pulse cannons, disabling all three enemy ships simultaneously. As the living vessels convulsed and died in space, life pods began ejecting from their hulls, more enslaved aliens escaping from their dying prisons. By the end of the day, the Dominion of Ash fleet had been completely destroyed or captured. Those ships that had been taken over by liberated slaves became the foundation of a new alliance of free species. The Dominion commanders and willing collaborators were captured for trial, while the forced conscripts and enslaved crews were freed to return to their homeworlds or join the liberation effort. Admiral Tae-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tactical display that now showed hundreds of Allied ships where once there had been an enemy fleet. The Vexhai homeworld was safe, its people saved from extinction by the combined efforts of humans and liberated aliens. "Admiral," called Communications Officer Yu-jin, "I'm receiving transmissions from all over the galaxy. Word of the battle is spreading fast. Dozens of species are sending messages of support and, sir, I'm getting distress calls from 17 different star systems. They're all asking for help against various threats." Admiral Tae-ho smiled. This was exactly what he had expected would happen. Once word spread that humans were willing to fight impossible odds to protect innocent species. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 442, Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood in the Great Hall of the newly constructed Galactic Justice Center. Before him sat representatives from dozens of alien species, all waiting to hear the final judgment on the Dominion of Ash war criminals. The trial had lasted for weeks, with testimony from thousands of survivors and liberated slaves. The evidence of genocide, slavery, and systematic cruelty was overwhelming. Now it was time for humanity to show the galaxy what justice looked like when Deathworlders were in charge. General Oh Dong-hyun served as the chief judge for the tribunal. His weathered face showed no emotion as he read the final verdict. The leaders of the Dominion of Ash are found guilty of genocide, enslavement of sentient species, and crimes against galactic civilization. The sentence is exile to the Kepler 186 system, a dead star system with minimal resources, for the remainder of their natural lives. Many of the alien observers were shocked by the sentence. Most galactic civilizations would have simply executed the war criminals or imprisoned them. But humans had chosen a different path, one that would force the guilty to survive in harsh conditions, while giving them a chance to build something better. Dr. Yoon So-young had spent months working with former Dominion soldiers who had been forced to participate in the genocide. Many of them were themselves victims of the system they had served. Her rehabilitation programs were helping them adjust to life in free society, though some would never fully recover from what they had been forced to do. "The important thing," she explained to a gathering of alien psychologists, "is that we separate those who chose evil from those who were forced into it. Punishment must fit both the crime and the circumstances of the criminal." Captain Lee Da-bin, now promoted to admiral in recognition of her role in the battle, was working on something much more important than punishment. She was building the Galactic Liberation Fleet into a force that could respond to threats anywhere in the galaxy. "The key," she told her new staff officers, many of whom were from liberated alien species, "is not to build an empire. We're not here to rule anyone. We're here to make sure that when innocent people call for help, someone answers." The Liberation Fleet was already responding to calls for help from across the galaxy. Commander Jang Woo-jin was leading operations to free enslaved populations on 7 different worlds. Captain Nam Ki-tae's stealth ships were gathering intelligence on other oppressive regimes. Engineer Park Ji-woo's electromagnetic weapons had been shared with dozens of species, giving them the tools to defend themselves. But the real success story was happening on the Vexhai homeworld. The crystalline beings had not only survived their ordeal, but they were thriving in ways they never had before. Their unique ability to interface with technology, combined with human engineering knowledge and resources from the liberated alien species, was producing miraculous results. "Look at this," said tech specialist Bae Sung-min as he showed Admiral Taeho through the restored Vexahai cities. "They've combined their natural crystal technology with our electromagnetic weapons to create defensive systems that can protect an entire planet. Any future attackers will find this world much harder to threaten." The Vexahai leader, a tall crystalline being whose body sparkled with internal light, approached them. "Admiral Taeho," she said in her musical voice, "our people wish to express our gratitude once more. You have given us not just our lives, but hope for the future." "We all did that together," Admiral Taeho replied. "Humans, Corvani, Zalani, and all the other species that fought for freedom. This victory belongs to everyone who refused to let evil win." But even as they celebrated their success, new challenges were emerging. Communications Officer Choi Yu-jin, now promoted to head of Galactic Communications, was receiving distress calls from across the galaxy every day. "Admiral," she reported during their daily briefing, "we have urgent calls for help from 43 different star systems. The word is spreading faster than we can respond to the requests." Admiral Taeho studied the map showing all the locations where help was needed. There were oppressive governments, slave trading organizations, and aggressive species threatening peaceful worlds. The scope of the problem was enormous. "We can't save everyone at once," he said to his senior staff, "but we can save some and teach others how to save themselves. That's how we turn this from an impossible task into a manageable one." Major Kang Hyun-soo, now Colonel and head of Liberation Fleet Special Operations, was training teams of aliens in human military tactics. "The key," he told his mixed species classes, "is not to fight like humans. It's to fight like yourselves, but with human determination and willingness to take calculated risks." The results were impressive. The Corvani had proven to be natural engineers and saboteurs. The Zalani were excellent pilots and scouts. Other species brought their own unique skills to the Liberation Fleet. Together, they were becoming a force that could face any threat. Sergeant Lim Hae-won was working with alien explosives experts to develop new weapons and tactics. "The important thing to remember," she told her students, "is that the goal is always to minimize casualties while maximizing effectiveness. We're not here to destroy everything. We're here to free people." As the months passed, the Liberation Fleet's reputation continued to grow. Species across the galaxy began using the phrase "call the Deathworlders" when they faced impossible situations. Human ships became symbols of hope for the oppressed and fear for the oppressors. But perhaps the most important development was happening in the diplomatic sphere. The liberated species were forming their own governments and alliances, with humans serving as advisors rather than rulers. This was exactly what Admiral Taeho had hoped for from the beginning. "We're not building an empire," he explained to a gathering of galactic ambassadors. "We're building a network of free, independent species who help each other when help is needed. That's much stronger than any empire." The Galactic Liberation Fleet's next major operation took them to the Tau Ceti system, where an aggressive militaristic species was threatening to invade 3 peaceful worlds. Admiral Dobbin led a combined human-alien fleet that included Vexahai ships, Corvani engineering vessels, and Zalani fighters. The battle was over in 6 hours. The aggressive species, faced with the combined might of the Liberation Fleet and the determination of species who had learned to fight for their freedom, chose to negotiate rather than face destruction. "This is what victory looks like," Admiral Dobbin told her fleet as they watched the signing of a peace treaty. "Not just winning battles, but making future battles unnecessary." Back on Earth, the human government was dealing with the implications of their species' new role in galactic affairs. Some politicians worried about the cost and danger of constantly helping other species. Others argued that this was humanity's destiny and duty. The debate was settled when the results started coming in. Trade with liberated species was making human worlds more prosperous than ever before. Technology sharing was advancing human science by centuries. Most importantly, humanity now had friends and allies throughout the galaxy. Admiral Taeho received a message from Earth's government that made him smile. The Colonial Council has voted to establish permanent funding for the Galactic Liberation Fleet. They're calling it the most successful foreign policy initiative in human history. As the first anniversary of the Battle of
Kepler 442 approached.
Admiral Taeho found himself standing once again on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars. But now, instead of seeing unknown dangers, He saw a galaxy full of friends and allies. Communications Officer Yu Jin approached him with the daily reports. Admiral, we received 67 calls for help today, but we also received offers of assistance from 43 different species. For the first time, more people are volunteering to help than are asking for help. That, said Admiral Tejo with satisfaction, is exactly what I was hoping to hear. Captain Dobbin joined them on the bridge, carrying orders for their next mission. Admiral, we've received a request from the Vega system. A peaceful trading confederation is being threatened by pirates. They're specifically asking for human commanders to help train their defense forces. How many ships do they need? Admiral Tejo asked. They don't want our ships, sir. They want our knowledge. They've built their own fleet using technology shared by the Liberation Fleet member species. They just need advisors to help them learn how to use it effectively. Admiral Tejo smiled. This was the ultimate success. Species that no longer needed to be rescued because they had learned to rescue themselves. As the Liberation Fleet prepared for its next mission, Admiral Tejo made an announcement to the entire fleet. Today marks the beginning of our second year as the Galactic Liberation Fleet. We've freed hundreds of worlds, liberated millions of people, and made allies throughout the galaxy. But our greatest achievement is not what we've done, it's what we've taught others to do for themselves. The response from the mixed human-alien crew was overwhelming. Cheers, applause, and expressions of solidarity in dozens of languages filled the communication channels. Now, Admiral Tejo continued, we have new people to help, and new friends to make. The Vega system is waiting for us, and after that there are dozens more calls for help.